Next up, oh my goodness, if you have ever listened to an audiobook with the careless disregard of most, you probably never realized what goes into the production of an audiobook. During the pandemic, our next speaker began exploring her long standing dream of becoming an audiobook narrator. Tonight, she'll give you a peek behind the curtain so that you can gain a newfound appreciation for what goes into the recording of an audiobook. Please help me welcome qualified speaker, distinguished Toastmaster, Dominique Fruchtman, with her speech, Reading Out Loud, It's Harder Than It Sounds.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Raise your hand if you listen to audiobooks. Okay, that's a few hands and feet. Wonderful. Thank you. Fantastic. I've always been a fan of audiobooks, even back when they were on cassette tapes and I listened in my car. During the pandemic, one of my lifelong desires was to become an audiobook narrator, and I thought, what better time than now? My business is closed. I've got nothing else going on. I've got months ahead of me, and it's something I can do from home. Well, I have a friend who's an audiobook narrator himself and an author. He lives in Australia, and he gave me one of his books to practice and start reading. I found a lot goes into an audiobook narration, and I wanted to share that with you tonight. So I have my friend Edie Doherty, who's here with us, and she's going to share her screen. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the process of what it's like to read. Now, she's going to share a piece of material that I've never seen before, and I'm going to read it for you. Edie, go ahead and share. Okay, great. So this is a book on imposter syndrome, which is something I don't have. What I do is I first read it quickly, just to make sure there's no words I don't know or names I can't pronounce. And then I read it again with feeling. So here goes the first cut. I'm so pleased you're giving this a try, and I promise you will find it worthwhile. Before I tackle the causes and symptoms of imposter syndrome, I want to give you a bit of background and explain the science behind it. The more you know about imposter syndrome, the better your chance of beating it. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Imposter syndrome was first described by two clinical psychologists, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes, in 1978. They noticed that their female students were full of doubt about their abilities and worried about their continuing successes. Don't worry, Edie, I'm just going to go, no, scroll back up. I'm going to go to the word career, and then I'm going to stop. So scroll back up for me. Edie, scroll up. Yeah, I'm going to just go to the bottom of the third paragraph, and I'm going to stop. One female student stated, I was convinced that I would be discovered as a phony when I took my comprehensive doctoral examination. I thought the final test had come. In one way, I was somewhat relieved at this prospect because the pretense would finally be over. I was shocked when my chairman told me that my answers were excellent and that my paper was one of the best he had seen in his entire career. Okay, so that's those three paragraphs. And now that I've read them just kind of quickly and without any real emphasis, I'm going to now take a breath and read those paragraphs as I would if I were narrating it. I'm so glad you're giving this a try, and I promise you will find it worthwhile. Before I tackle the causes and symptoms of imposter syndrome, I want to give you a bit of background and explain the science behind it. The more you know about imposter syndrome, the better your chance of beating it. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Imposter syndrome was first described by two clinical psychologists, Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes, in 1978. They noticed that their female students were full of doubt about their abilities and worried about continuing their successes. One female student stated, "I was convinced that I would be discovered as a phony when I took my comprehensive doctoral examination. I thought the final test had come. In one way, I was somewhat relieved at this prospect because the pretense would finally be over. I was shocked when my chairman told me that my answers were excellent and that my paper was one of the best he'd seen in his entire career." Thanks, Edie. You can stop sharing now.
Black is correct. So why don't we go ahead and
That's my process. I have never seen that book, never heard of it, never read it before, but my process is to just skim through it, read it, get a feel for it. I usually do it once like that, and if we had more time, I would do it again, and the parts that I felt I stumbled over or that I could do a little better, I would do a little better. I do one recording, and if I falter, I'll go back and read that again, and then I edit, and I edit out the flubs. So I'll just read something over and over, sometimes 10 or 12 times until I get it right, and then just edit out those 9 or 10 mistakes and leave the good one. Sometimes it's like rubbing sandpaper on a scab, and you just read something 12, 15, 27 times. Sometimes at the end of a film, you watch the outtakes of a movie and you see how many times they mess up and you wonder, how did they ever get it right? And the same thing happens like this. Overall, though, my message to everybody is, when you listen to an audiobook, no matter how bad the narration might be, just keep in mind that that person still put a lot of effort into it. And they might be getting better. They might be an old pro, but regardless, somebody had to publish that book. Somebody had to audition for the narration. They had to sit down and read it. Then they had to edit it, produce it, and publish the audiobook version too. So when you listen to your next audiobook, think of this, remember me, and if you've got a book you want narrated, consider me, because I'd like to believe I'm not half bad. Madam Toastmaster.
Dominique, thank you so much. Whoa, now we know the behind the curtain feel of the narrator. I have listened to many audiobooks. I never knew the complexities and the simplicities of audiobook narrators. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.